Namaskar, and a very warm hello to all of you. It's lovely to see all of you out here, and thank you for joining in. We live in a time which is replete with a us versus a them mindset. It is always like, we keep on hearing my community versus your community or their community. There are divisions in the form of or based on language, religion, creed, skin color, political views, and whatnot. Evolutionary science, however, tells us that we as human beings are genetically engineered to come together, live together, help each other out, collaborate, thrive, sustain, and grow in a complex environment. We are all going through a pandemic situation currently. And now, more than ever, we all really need to understand the need of coming together, the need of living and working side by side, valuing each other, and working towards a common goal, a common purpose, or a cause. And that is precisely why we are having a conversation today on the topic working together for growth, the indomitable power of community. It's a pleasure for me to host my esteemed guest today, Mr. Surya Prakash Mahapatra, with whom I'm going to engage in a conversation. Welcome, Mr. Surya. And thank you for joining
Thank
us
you.
today.
Thank you so much.
Introducing Mr. Mahapatra, he is a veteran in the field of learning and development. He works as a senior leader in the space of L&D with a multinational organization. He is also an ardent social worker and a very passionate speaker on various subjects, especially which concerning the society, and he does all the sessions across the globe. It's my pleasure again, Mr. Surya, to have you in this session today with me. Introducing myself, I am Tanaya Chaudhary, and I work in the field of human resources or people sciences. So without much ado, let me start off my conversation with Mr. Mahapatra. My first question to you, Mr. Mahapatra, is, and we have spoken about communities, right at the onset, I spoke about, communities and the need of coming together. So why do you think communities are required? And is there an intent in the first place with which community structures were created?
First of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this program. And then it's a very interesting conversation. The topic that you have chosen as community, and the question that you asked me is, how were they created? How were they structured? Well, I think it did not essentially happen by design. When the evolution started, when civilization began, when people came out of the caves, when they moved out of the stone age and then stepped into civilization, like-minded people came together. And when they came together, they wanted to live together in groups, in communities. They saw merits of living together, and that's how it started. So it was not, there was any defined set of rules which governed that, the evolution of communities. It just started. And when it started, people saw the benefit of this. And we have, when we go back to ancient history, we know that tribal communities existed. We also knew that when communities started and evolved, and there were multiple communities that were created, each community from a different part of the land, with certain unique characteristics, certain practices and customs, etc., became they started looking at themselves as a particular community as opposed to another community, which they consider to be not the same, but different from their own community. So that's how the evolution started.
Sure.
Communities then define their own purpose, they define their own
Sure.
objectives, they define their own guidelines, the fundamental guidelines that would govern their coexistence, etc. I think that's how communities began.
Sure. So, what we understand from you is that there was no rule or reason as such for people to come together. It was maybe a biological need because man is a social, human being is a social animal. So, there is an inherent need that we cannot actually live in isolation. And that's how people came on together, like-minded. You use the term like-minded. So, like-minded folks came together, formed groups, and finding common purposes, and that's how it all evolved. So thank you so much. I think it gives us a fair idea of how actually the community came into being. So carrying on the same line of thought where you left us in your last response, so when we look at history, or say even in the current context, we see somehow that community mindset has created a lot of anguish, a lot of heartburn, a lot of harm in the society than good. Be it the tussle, and I was talking about it when I was introducing the subject itself. Be it the tussle between various religious groups, linguistic communities, political mindsets, we see a lot of heartburn, a lot of anguish in the society. So, don't you think that it has created a lot of hatred in the society, and which has actually bitten the very purpose of the creation of community, which you spoke about? What are your thoughts there?
Yes, so that's absolutely correct. So unfortunately, there is a lot of bad blood between communities fighting against each other. But fundamentally, if we go back and look at the evolution of community, and when the community started growing, we saw different kind of relationships evolving within those communities. So there was one approach which was existence by exploitation. So there are one set of communities, maybe the rich, were always trying to exploit the poor because they had the power, they had the authority, they had the influence, and they could do that. So by exploitation as one way of existing within a community and existing with other communities. The other
Right.
type of relationship was competition, where two sets of people competing for the same set of resources. Typically that we see. When in a country like India, sometimes we see different states are fighting for water resources,
Right,
countries
right.
fighting for natural resources, right? So it was by competition. There was another type of relationship which was neutralism. Communities existed, but they were
Okay,
indifferent to each other. They were not coming in
okay,
the way of each other. They were
okay,
absolutely neutral to each other. So there was no conflict, but there was no collaboration. But the fourth type of relationship was mutualism, where their growth, their existence, their progress depended on each other. They coexisted. So these are different types of relationships that evolved. And sometimes those relationships were governed by values, and sometimes they were governed by man's greed and also ignorance. So the very fact that that all of us are united, there is an underlying unity, that knowledge was missing. When the communities evolved, they looked at themselves as unique and different. So if we go back to our scriptures, in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says, the knowledge by which one perceives the unity in diverse beings is sattvic knowledge, is the knowledge
right.
of the highest.
Cool.
But the knowledge by which one perceives various entities as different from each other, that knowledge was what's called Rajasic knowledge, which is probably knowledge of the second order. So I think it's the ignorance of people that ultimately the human beings, the human nature, the human body is made up of five components: earth, water, fire, air, and space. And
Right.
every human being has those five elements. The nature has these five elements. So that's the commonality. While their individual characteristics were different, did not realize, but there was something which is common. Every individual wanted to live, wanted to exist, wanted to grow. While the approach was different, the manner in which they were trying to go about it was different, but the inherent hankering to live, to exist, and to grow was there in every individual, thereby in every family, thereby in
Absolutely.
every community. So that was something
Absolutely.
which was, I think, the ignorance that we are one while we are different in terms of our characteristics, beliefs, and then religious practices, customs, rituals, etc. But we are, as a human being, we are made up of the same human elements, the pancha tattva, as we
Panchabhutam.
call it in our scriptures.
Right.
And we forgot that essential fact that we are from the same, we are the creation of the creator. And when we forgot that, we started seeing the differences among ourselves. And those differences became the bone of contention. And that's where
Right.
conflicts
So I'm
and
sure
then
uh, we are facing some network challenges, looks like. Somehow I have lost the connection
okay,
with my panelist, my guest, uh, Mr. Surya.
okay.
So I think what he
I
was,
can,
trying to tell us, and as we are getting him back. So, Mr. Surya, I just lost you for a couple of seconds, and I was just telling my viewers that what you were trying to tell, the thoughts which were converging, that why all this hatred came upon us. One who talked about exploitation, with giving all those examples, and exploitation of the poor by the rich, and then you talked about the competition which crept in. You talked about neutralism, wherein we became different groups became indifferent to each other, and then obviously you talked about ignorance. So we failed to realize at the end that we are one. And you took us back to our religious scriptures and talked about how we all are created out of those panchatattva or the panchabhuta that we talked about. So sorry we lost you for a couple of seconds. You may like to continue with your with your thoughts.
sure. Am I back? Can you hear me now?
Yeah. I'm able to hear you now. Please go ahead.
Okay. So it's the ignorance which was the primary cause of the conflict. The moment we forgot that we are one, there is unity in the midst of the diversity. There is an underlying unity despite our differences in our
Yeah,
practices, beliefs, characteristics. Of course, each individual is different. Each individual has his or her uniqueness, unique distinctiveness. You know, everybody has unique instincts, and that's the
absolutely.
that's the law of the nature. But those instincts, those differences are actually essential, and they complement each other.
Right.
And we realize that we have an underlying unity, we have a common purpose, and we are one. I think when we forgot that, then we tried to dominate each other. There is
Yeah.
one upman, there was
Sure,
clash.
absolutely.
There was-
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think no good thoughts there, and I think our audience have also started engaging with us, and I can see a lot of questions popping up on my screen. We will come back. I think at the end of the conversation, when my questions are done, definitely I'll come to you, viewers, and we will definitely learn a lot from Mr. Mahapatra today. Another thing which I would like to, I missed telling in the beginning is both myself and Mr. Mahapatra are a part of the Satsang family. So we are connected that way, wherein our life, our being is guided and inspired by the life and teachings of our spiritual master, Sri Sri Thakur Anukul Chandra. Mr. Mahapatra, while you answered the question which I have now for you, in part, you definitely have answered in your response to my last question itself. But still, I would, because it is important for us to understand it a little better, I will still ask that to you. So we talked about the different hatred and how it all came into being in the society. So how can we come out of this whirlpool of community-based hatred and imbibe the true spirit of living together? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so this is possible. Again, I think we'll have to go back to our scriptures. The answer is there. Vasudhaiva
Sure.
Kutumbakam. This is
Vasudeva
such a
Kutumbakam.
powerful,
Absolutely.
profound learning that we all have received from our scriptures. The whole mankind is one family. I'm reminded of a pious man who had two sons. On one
Okay.
occasion, a pious man, but had who also was a homemaker, was living a normal life. And one day, when he saw that both of his sons are fighting with each other. The younger one is saying, "The elder brother has taken away. He has snatched my toy."
Okay.
Typical family between children that happens in our
Yes.
households. And this pious man said something very interesting. He asked this little boy, the younger one, "Who does this toy belong to?" He said, "It's mine,
Okay.
it's mine." He said, "Who does your brother belong to?" The boy said, "Oh, the brother is also mine." The
Wow.
pious man said, "If both belong to you, why are you crying?" So this is the essence of our
Very powerful
scriptures.
story.
And this is what Vasudeva Kutumbakam is all about. The whole universe is one family. When we all consider ourselves as members of the same family, there is no question of any hatred. There is so much of love between the siblings in a family, despite occasional fights, which is primarily because of the love and the bond they have with each other. But brothers and sisters, sons and daughters of a couple of parents, they have such a fantastic bonding with each other. They never consider themselves to be different from each other. But if you look at it minutely, they're actually different from each other. Each one is different. Maybe one child is good at mathematics, another is good at English literature, and another is good at music. Their temperament is different. They're all different, but they have so much of love for each other because they consider themselves to be part of the same family. So it's the fundamental principle Vasudeva Kutumbakam. That's the essential aspect of community living and communities coming together and living with each other. You talked about our spiritual guide, Sri Thakur Anukul Chandra, and he says something very profound. He says, where varieties arrive with a meaning at unity, it is a university. So
Hmm.
university offers so many courses, so many different courses. Each field or each domain or each branch of study is different from the other, but is one place, one common place where these varieties come together. They arrive with a meaning at unity. The whole universe is also an example that is very similar to that. Despite so
Absolutely.
many diversities, um, it's again in one family. And today we have so much of animosity on the lines of religion. Sri Sri Thakur Anukul Chandra says something very profound. He says, God is one, Dharma is one, prophets are the same servers of the one. While we fight in the name of God, in the name of religion, all the religions preach the same thing. All the religions preach humanity, brotherhood, integrity, truthfulness, and all those virtues. Very quickly, I would like to share an incident in the life of Sri Thakur Nukul Chandra, an American young man by the name Ray Archer Hauserman. He got to know about Sri Thakur Nukul Chandra, and he had this urge to meet him. He came to his ashram in Himayatpur, Pabna, erstwhile Bangladesh, and he met Sri Thakur Nukul Chandra. He had come with a lot of anxiety. He had a lot of questions in his mind. He had doubts in his mind about the man that he's going to meet. And Sister Thakur was in probably was in his mid 50s, and this man probably was in his 20s, mid 20s. This young man, when he met Thakur Anukul Chandra, the very first question that he asked him was, "Do you believe in Christ?" Do you believe in Christ? Sister Thakur Kulchandra paused for a moment, smiled, and then said, if Christ were alive today, I would have been the first man to accept him as my living ideal.
Wow.
Ray Archer Hauserman, in his book, Ocean in the Teacup, says that you cannot imagine the gap that could exist between a 25-year-old Catholic American Christian and a 53-year-old Hindu Brahmin. Possibly the gap could be huge. It could be a very big gap. But he is saying just one sentence by Sister Thakur Chandra, that if Christ were alive today, I would have been the first person to accept him as my living ideal. He said the gulf between these two characters, between these two personalities, melted away in no time. That's the
So
power.
beautiful.
That's the essence of religion. All the religions lead to the same path, lead to the same destination. The ways could be different, the means could be different, the practices and customs and rituals could be different, but the destination is the same, is realization of God in human life, realization of godly attributes within oneself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Beautiful thoughts there, and powerful stories. First, from the scripture wherein you talked about a family, and then obviously from the great spiritual master, very thought-provoking stories. And somehow we are also ignorant. We somehow think religion as communities. We divide ourselves, saying my religion, your religion, as if it is leading us to different paths, wherein it is leading us to the same supreme being, the source. And
Yes.
when we were talking all this, I was also remembering one thing which I had heard, is how we can see unity in all of us, the same flame in all of us. For example, a candle is there, okay? And from this candle, I light another candle. And then from that candle, say 5 other candles get lit. And at the end, say 100 candles are getting lit from that same source. So will we be able to understand which is the source candle, or which is the first candle, or which is the 15th candle which was lit? Not at all. Because there, everything is the same. Everything is reflection, or the being of the first candle which lit it. So similarly, I think somehow I could relate to what you were exactly saying about finding the sameness, finding the unity, finding the essence of the supreme being in all of us. And that is what I think moves us away from the hatred which the very term community has brought along with it, though it was not supposed to be as such. So thank you so much.
And this is such a very interesting example you shared. When each candle understands that the flame is from the same source, candles are not going to fight with each other.
Absolutely.
Because they recognize the source. The source is the same.
And when they will not fight with each other, and so many candles are lit, just imagine the beauty, just imagine the charisma, just imagine the magnificence which we
Absolutely.
all will be able to witness. And that is how maybe the society should be.
Yes, and being empowered by the Creator himself, each candle will have the power to light every other candle that is probably
Absolutely.
there. So,
and that is what we can
coming from the source where all of us are endowed with indomitable energy, infinite strength, because source is the epitome of energy and strength.
Absolutely. So very interesting, conversation. I myself am learning so much, Mr. Mahapatra, and feel fortunate that you could, I could engage in a conversation with you today. Just again, continuing with the same flow of thoughts, and you mentioned about it when you started first. You talked about the purpose of life. So if we look at the purpose of life, so sometimes it looks like, obviously we are not able to understand what the purpose of life is. It seems too huge and incomprehensible sort of a thing. But at the very basic, and you talked about it, it is about existence. It is about the urge to exist. It is about, and with existence, the next step is what? Growth, right? So
Right.
the life at its basic is about existence and growth. So how do you believe that coming together in groups, forming communities, um, and community as it stands for in the truest sense of the term, helps us in existence and growth? I just want to understand your thoughts there. Or how does it
So
support
coming
existence?
together, right. So this is a great question. So coming together, collaborating with each other, standing up for each other, coexisting is essential for our very existence. So if you're studying in a college and you stay in a hostel and you also have a roommate, and and the fact is you follow hygienic practices, you wash your clothes, you take your bath regularly, you follow all hygienic practices. Your roommate who lives with you is absolutely filthy, doesn't take care of herself, he doesn't wash her clothes regularly, doesn't take care of her hygiene. And my question to you is, by following the best practices of hygiene yourself, can you guarantee that you'll be free from diseases?
Not at all.
Because your
Not at all.
roommate is not following the practices that you are following. So, by being good yourself does not guarantee your own good. If your family members, if your neighbor, if others in your neighborhood and your society, if they are not living in goodness, if they're not living happily, peacefully, with good moral values, if they're not living the life in a meaningful way, your living life in a meaningful way actually will be meaningless. So our very existence depends on our meaningful coexistence. It's very important that we need to coexist together in harmony. So our existence depends on that. Now the question is growth. When communities evolve, the only thing that can help communities grow is interinterestedness. Individuals within the community need to be interested in each other's well-being. One community needs to be interested in the interest and well-being of other community. And as long as that does not happen, we will continue to have this conflict and hatred. We'll see this unrest. We'll see so much of bloodbath, unfortunately. So that interestedness is absolutely essential. This reminds me of another incident from the life of Sri Thakur Anukul Chandra. Sri Thakur's devotees used to go to different places to preach about his holiness and his greatness, and also preach about his messages of being and becoming. The same uh, existence and growth you were talking about, Sri Thakur used to call that being and becoming, existence and expansion and growth. So these devotees used to take the message of life and growth to the far and to the nooks and corners of the country. On one such occasion, this group of devotees wanted to go out to preach his message. And when they were about to leave the ashram, Thakur Anukul Chandra called them and then said, "Hey, one young man from a village has come. He's a singer. Why don't you take him with you?" These devotees, who are so-called intellectual, educated devotees, looked at this young man, and that man looked very dirty and wearing shabby clothes and all. And they did not have the motivation to take him along with them. But their Guruji has asked them to do that. How can they say no? Willingly and unwillingly, they took him along with them. And within a couple of days, they realized this guy is not only dirty and then from a village, is not educated, but is also a pickpocket, because he was stealing small things from people's bags and pockets, etc. And they immediately threw him out. They said, "You get lost. You don't deserve to be with us." Then these guys went about for about 15, 20 days, spreading the message of the Guruji. And then they came back to the ashram finally. They were very eager to meet the Guruji and then explain to them about the great things they did, the great experience they had. The Guruji was not in the mood to listen to them. But one fine day, he agreed to listen. These young devotees were about to narrate their experience. Sister Thakur Anukul Chandra asked them, "Where is Birju?" Birju was the young man that he had sent with these devotees. And they did not know what to tell Guruji because they had thrown him out of the party long back. And they said, "Thakur, we asked him to leave our group." But Thakur said, "Why?" One of them said, "Thakur, he was a pickpocket. He was stealing. He was a petty thief. So we threw him out of the group." Thakur Anukul Chandra became very grave, looked very sad and cheerless, and said, "You are going about propagating my message of being and becoming, universal brotherhood. You could not adjust a young man with you. You could not adjust a man with you. What brotherhood you were talking about? What love and compassion you were talking about?" One young man who was an intellectual man, highly educated, he stood up and then said, "Thakur, but Thakur, survival of the fittest. That man was not fit enough to survive in our group." Thakur said, "Survival of the fittest? I don't believe in that. Make the unfit fit, then only you will survive. Make the incompetent competent, then only you will survive. Make the inefficient efficient, then only you will survive. If you don't do that, there'll be a question mark on your survival itself." See, such a powerful statement. When the general belief is you have to be better than others, you have to outwit others, you have to dominate others to succeed. But Sister Thakur's message was, make those who are unfit, make those who are lagging behind, help them, those who are lagging behind, bring them up to speed, those who are moving slowly, help those who are inefficient. That would drive your efficiency. That would drive your strength. That will drive your competency, your capability. See how helping each other within a community will drive the larger growth and expansion and progress of the community. That is absolutely essential.
Beautiful, story there, and even a powerful message coming out, wherein and precisely that is something which we don't do in the society currently.
Yes.
The moment we see that somebody is lagging behind us, we would be like so happy, and we would be feeling that how can I increase that gap? How we can increase the distance, right? So very beautiful story. And very recently, right? I don't remember it in entirety, but since you were talking about this, it came to mind. Somebody went to an African village, and they met with the kids, and there was I think bag of fruits, and the kids were told that whoever will run fast will get that entire bunch of fruits or a basket of fruits. After some time they realized that all the kids formed a human chain together, took each other along, and together they went and got that basket of fruit. So I think this is precisely what we are talking about, that together if we want to survive, together if we want to grow, we have to coexist, we have to help each other out. So we have to come from a mode of competition to a mode of
Right.
collaboration, to a mode of collaboration. And I think at the essence, at the core of it is love for each other, the realization that we are a part of the same source. Uh, so I think that is what is, precisely being talked about here. So I don't know, somehow some audio issues I'm facing. Just let me, as I make the check on this, let me just check it. Okay, it's better now. Okay, so I think by now, Mr. Mahapatra, we all have a very fair idea of how community living actually helps us move forward and grow. But if we look at it, right, we individuals form a community. Okay, we individuals form a community. We individuals are the basic units of a community. So how a community functions will largely depend upon how we as individual function in our personal space, in our social space. So we want to understand from you how as individuals we can be mindful of our actions. How can we be a very responsible members of a community so that we are able to tap into the indomitable power of community? We are able to realize, we are able to display that communities actually can be a powerhouse and can live together, work together with each other towards growth. And that is what we mean by the indomitable power of community. What are your thoughts there, Mr. Mahapatra? How, as individuals, what are the actions which are on us? Though you touched upon it when you spoke about, but if you can elaborate a little more on the actions which are on all of us on the same. Mr. Mahapatra, are you able to hear me?
Yes, I think I had got disconnected. I'm back now.
Okay, so I was asking you about as individuals, what are the actions which we need to be mindful about in a community setup? Because at the end of the day, community is made of individuals like you and me, right? Or maybe the audience who is with us today. We are the basic units. So, what is the message?
Right.
How we really should go about things so that we are able to realize the power of community?
Yes. So community is made up of individuals. So if anybody can drive the change has to begin with me as an individual. So if every individual performs the rightful duties as members of the community, we don't have to worry about the progress of the community, the harmonious existence of community members. So the most important thing that we need to keep in mind is essentially we talked about coexistence, we talked about interestedness, we talked about Vasudeva Kutumbakam, we talked about universal brotherhood. But how would this brotherhood come? Unless we all align ourselves to the universal Father, to the Supreme Father. So, if the brothers and sisters in a family do not respect their parents, do you think they would love each other? They would never love each other. If they ignore their source and they try to create bonding with each other, that is never going to happen. So, the first and foremost thing is to align oneself with the Supreme Father, the Universal Father. Then a harmonious family will be possible, a harmonious society will be possible, a harmonious province will be possible, a harmonious country will be possible, a harmonious universe will be possible. So, first of all, we'll have to align ourselves with the Universal Father. The Universal Father is the Creator Himself. And how do we find Him? The Creator comes in human form in every age. And we call Him a prophet. And whether we talk about Jesus Christ, talk about Lord Buddha, talk about Lord Krishna, Lord Rama, all of them were prophets. They were the messengers of the Supreme Source. So when the prophet comes in human form, when he comes as the embodiment of all the characteristics of a absolutely perfect human being, with all the virtues, wisdom, strength, vigor, and energy, when he comes as fulfiller the best, when he comes as the highest, when he comes as the most reformed human being of that age, when he comes as the most resolved human being of that age, when such a personality who is the messenger, who is the carrier of the message of the Supreme Source, and when we align ourselves to such a Supreme Personality as our Guru, as our living ideal, when we connect ourselves with love, admiration, and service towards such a person, we unite ourselves with the Supreme Being, with the Creator, with the source, with the Supreme Father, then universal brotherhood is possible. So it is imperative for every human being to find that living ideal, that guru, that Sadguru in life, by looking at whom, by following whom, by serving whom, one can find meaning in his life. And Sri Sri Thakur Anukul Chandra says, you are for the Lord, not for others. You are for the Lord, and so for others. You are only for your Creator, not for anyone else. But because you are for the Creator, it is your natural behavior to be loving everyone, because everyone belongs to the Creator, and you love the Creator. So you are you, it is your natural, spontaneous character to love His creation. Imagine when that happens, the world will become a beautiful place. Universal brotherhood be achieved through universal fatherhood.
Lovely thoughts there and lovely message. You are for the Lord and not for others. You are for the Lord and so for others. So, what Mr. Mahapatra, you are trying to, and if I've understood it right, you are trying to, really talk about that how it is important for all of us to work together, to grow together. We have to connect to the source. The connection to the source is very important. That realization that the same source feeds or powers all our souls is important. And how we do that? We do that through the attachment. And you mentioned love, admiration, service to a living ideal or a Sadguru. Uh, Attachment to the living ideal, and through whom we get connected to the source. And once we do that, we definitely are able to work together, discover the beautiful unity, the beautiful commonality, beautiful sameness in all of us. And that is how we individuals can thrive together and grow. And that is at the very essence of it. So thank you so much. Beautiful thoughts there again, Mr. Mahapatra. And I think this brings us to the end of our conversation today. I definitely loved conversing with you. And as I mentioned earlier, it has been a huge learning for me as well. And so we have a very enthusiastic audience who have joined with us today. And I was continuously seeing the questions which were coming to us. I was able to see them on my screen. So maybe it's time to take the questions, Mr. Mahapatra. And I'll read out the questions as I'm able to see on the screen. And if you could please respond to the same, would be awesome.
Sure.
So the first question is, and you have really touched upon it, to an extent in your conversation, is coming from our guest, Mr. Shubhrajit Sharma. Can coexistence be a reality without cooperation?
No, coexistence cannot be reality without cooperation. So the fundamental principle of coexistence is cooperation, being interested in each other's interest and well-being, and help each other stand up and grow. And we do that every day in our life, in some sense, in our families, in our circles, in our societies. We do that, but whenever we don't do that, we see communities breaking down. They're breaking away from each other.
Sure. Hope it answered your question. Let me just try to see the other questions which are coming up. Another question which has come up is, if you consider me as a member of your family, but I look at you as a foe, then how effective is the feeling of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam? So you are considering me as a family, but I am looking at you as my enemy. Completely the reverse of how you were perceiving me. So how then, the feeling of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, how effective will be that?
Right. So I think if in the family one considers the other as a friend, and the other considers the family member as an enemy, So I think what we'll have to understand here is the person who considers a family member to be an enemy is ignorant. So we will have to remove his or her ignorance. If you don't remember, remove that ignorance, Vasudeva, the essence of Vasudeva Kutumbakam will not be fulfilled. So if I'm a little more learned, knowledgeable, it is my job to help my family member who probably is under the influence of ignorance. Remember the story that we discussed? Make the unfit fit, help the incompetent become competent. So, to establish the true essence of Vasudeva Kutumbakam, I'll have to understand that the friend, the family member who considers me to be an enemy is ignorant. So I have to help him remove that ignorance. So I have to become interested in removing that ignorance. But if I become indifferent, he would continue to bring harm to me. And I would continue to try and find ways and means to escape from the harm. Or I may try to counterattack him. So it is essential that if I'm a learned member in the family, then I must make an attempt to remove the ignorance with love, with compassion. And don't we do that in our family? If you have a cut, if you have an injury in one part of your body, you don't remove that part of the body. You heal it. You try to cure, that injury, heal the injury. So similarly, if there is one element within the family which is ignorant, it's our responsibility to help that person.
Sure. So we have to remove the cloud of ignorance, and at the basic is the love and compassion through which we will go about that process. So thank you so
Absolutely.
much, Mr. Bhabatra. Another question which is coming our way is, speaking of rightful duty, how does someone know what is right?
Um, to understand what is right is to understand, first of all, what is in the common interest of the community. We need to understand the larger purpose. If I am not sure about my duty, I need to understand what is my purpose, what is my objective. In the material world, when we talk about scientific devices, when I talk about medical devices, who creates those devices? It's a community of computer science engineers, or community of mechanical engineers, or a community of doctors. Well, they all come together to create it. So there's no one upmanship over the other. One of them cannot create a medical device. You need to have a doctor who will bring in the expertise of healthcare domain. You need somebody who understands the mechanical device, and you need somebody who understands computers, computer technology. You need to bring them together. And this is an example of different communities coming together with a purpose. The purpose is to create a device which will help the humanity. So my rightful duty is to find out what is my purpose and pursue that purpose. If I find my purpose, I'll find the way.
Sure, sure. And I think, sometimes to add on to, what you are saying, one is purpose, and somebody who helps us realize that purpose, somebody who helps us, tell what is right from the wrong, or maybe induces in us the potential to differentiate the right from the wrong, is a Sadguru, which you talked about in our conversation today, right? So an ideal, a living ideal is very important in terms of helping us discover our own potential. And when our own potential gets discovered, we will be able to tell the right from the wrong.
So at the crossroads of life, sometimes we get lost and we lose sight of the purpose as well. So we need a guru, as you said, who will help us find that purpose. When you are learning how to swim, you go deep inside the water and you have not become an expert, and then you are drowning. All you need a guru, you need the swimming coach to help you.
Absolutely.
So at the crossroads of life, when we are lost completely, when we are clueless, the guru is absolutely essential. Guru is there to help us, but we need to be attached to the guru.
Absolutely.
You made a
love,
Very important.
admiration, and service, which you talked about. So I think the questions are exhausted currently, and I think we have exhausted our time as well. Thank you so much again, all of you who joined us in the session today. And of course, a big big thank you to Mr. Mahapatra, Mr. Surya Prakash Mahapatra, for joining us today in the session. I'm sure our audience have had a lot of takeaways from today's session. A lot of powerful stories which you told us. Stories which are powerful because they come with a lot of message, a lot of meaning, which definitely would help us as we move about our daily life and existence. So thank you so much. I think this discussion will surely help us understand that community, in the truest sense of the term, came into being because of an inherent social need of human beings, but somehow down the lane through exploitation, ignorance, or whatever, we somehow distorted the meaning of community. It is time we realize the true potential of community, the true power of community. Live together, work together, thrive, and not only thrive, grow together. And that is when we will be able to realize, we will be able to discover the magic which being together in communities brings along with it. Thank you so much. Take care, stay safe, and stay healthy. And most importantly, stay happy, all of you. Thank you so much. See you in another session. And we are looking forward to your feedback on the session. Please do let us know your feedback. We would love to learn from you in the form of comments in our Facebook page. Thank you so much. Namaskar.
Thank you. Namaskar.